over the weekend, I alone tweeted this out. This week on the Fantasy Football Happy Hour, available wherever you get your podcasts. Please like and subscribe. And I mean that, by the way. Please like and subscribe our podcast here at the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. We are doing an AMA, Ask Matthew Anything. So what do you want to know? Football nonsense, leave your question below, and we may use it on the podcast and on Peacock TV. So we got a bunch of responses. Now, again, at NBC Sports, they didn't tweet it out. At SNF on NBC didn't tweet it out. At NBC Sports Edge, FB didn't tweet it out. Me alone. I had to carry the load. Social media team was off on the weekend. It was just me. Hey, Matthew, we need you to do our jobs for us. So it's fine. I did because I'm a team player. I'm a company man.
You're a team player.
So what came through? I haven't looked at these questions.
Yeah.
I don't look at my mentions.
So forgive me if I butcher any of these handles, which I surely will. But the first one is an easy one. At Whit Baldwin says, who was your first fantasy football draft pick ever? Mine was Sean Alexander.
Okay, and that was Witt's first one.
That was Witt's, not mine.
Not
mine
yours.
Was Steven Jackson, I think.
Okay.
I think he let me down. Not enough touchdowns on those Rams teams. They kept going 2-14.
Well, that's Jeff Fisher's fault, not Steven
exactly.
Jackson.
No, he did the right thing.
We love Steven Jackson here on the show. One of my favorite players ever, Steven Jackson, by the way, just randomly. So, again, this is one of those, this is a sneaky question because you know what it is? This is like, hey, Barry, how old are you?
Yeah, show your
That's
age.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. I'm going to ask him how old he is without asking him how old he is.
Clever.
It's
clever from at Whit Baldwin.
It really is. It's one of those sometimes on TikTok or on Instagram, tell me you're a blank without telling me you're blank. That's what it is. Tell me you're an old F, without telling me you're an old F. So that's what I am. My very first time ever playing fantasy football. I started playing fantasy baseball in 1984 when I was 14 years old. When I was in 1994, my second year in college was when I started playing fantasy football. My first pick that year was Marshall Faulk, which worked out pretty well.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah, pretty good one. Yeah. Worked out really well. My first baseball pick ever, by the way, my first fantasy baseball pick back in 1984 was Mario Soto.
Okay.
The former Reds pitcher. But my second one was Tony Gwynn.
Okay, that worked out better.
So that one worked out. Tony Gwynn worked out pretty well. But back in 1984, no one had any strategy or anything like that. It's like, oh, Mario Soto should be a good pitcher. Whatever. I was doing an auction draft, and so Soto came up in. He's
Marshall Faulk. That's a good one.
Faulk.
Okay.
Yes.
Next one from at Young Elon Musk.
Right.
Is Travis Etienne a viable running back too?
Right. By the way, as far as we know here on the Fantasy Football Happy Hour, not actually related to Elon Musk.
That's our best guess. Yeah.
That is our best guess. We can neither confirm nor deny. Yes. I mean, look, I have Etienne ranked 18th, so obviously I think he can be a top 24 running back. I don't think the challenge for him to get there is that high.
No.
Again, we sort of talk about that running back dead zone and some of the guys that are going around him. But my expectation here is that even if James Robinson gets into the mix here, we think that Etienne, is a special player.
Yep.
We think reconnected, obviously, with Trevor Lawrence, his college quarterback, should be good. Think about this. Last year, James Robinson, on a disaster of a team, everything that could have gone wrong for the Jaguars last year went wrong. And James Robinson, yet still, was the 8th best running back in fantasy from weeks 1 through 6. So the Jaguars have actually, thanks to James Robinson, been able to produce fantasy-relevant running backs. We expect this under Doug Peterson to be a much more fantasy-friendly offense and a much more pass-happy offense. And obviously, Etienne is going to be the passing down back. And I believe that when you think about sort of how he plays, those kind of big playability of Etienne, I think that, to me, I don't think he has to do much to return a profit. He's going at running back 22 and 44th overall on Yahoo. Again, I'm at 18 at 37. So I truly believe he can be a top 20 running back this year, a RB2, a viable RB2, and obviously Yahoo drafters do as well. So
yeah, I think the thing with Etienne and the Jags in general is that it's going to be a committee. That's how Doug Peterson does it.
Correct.
No Eagle got more than 180 carries under Doug Peterson.
Correct.
It was a mismatch. A lot of Ryan Matthews, Corey Clement, LeGarrette Blunt. My namesake, Jay Ajayi.
Yeah.
So I think that Etienne, he doesn't have the immense upside because of that committee. He's not going to be a Jonathan Taylor. He doesn't have that in him.
Correct.
But you're not expecting that when you're drafting him, and he seems totally fine to me as an RB2.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, assuming you play in a league where it's PPR, at least half PPR, his pass catching and his yards after the catch ability and the fact that he's going to be so involved in so many different dynamic plays, I think is really interesting to me. So I just think there's upside in that player. I agree with you. I don't think he's got a shot at getting an RB1 unless something really freaky happens, but I do think he's got a higher floor based on the pass catching than some of the other guys going around him.
Yeah, okay, so the next one is from @TheSincereKBean.
Okay.
And this one...
I like that he uses sincere. Like, just so we know this is a genuine question. All right, yeah, what do we got?
So this one is for Jay to see how well he knows his new co-host at Matthew Berry TMR.
Okay,
Jay, do you think Matthew was born before or after World War I? Not even World War II. World War I.
What is this guy's name?
@TheSincereKBean.
Yeah, all right.
I mean, that's silly. I mean, the question would be World War II.
Can we take a single of me here for one question? Hey, just see. I don't know if you can read between the lines here, but that's what I'm.
That's a tough one.
Just so you know.
Yeah.
World War I. Come on.
I'm
not that old. I'm old, but I'm not that old.
No. World War II would have been the question. That would be, so that ended in 1945. So it's over under 77 and a half years. Yeah. So,
you guys are cruel.
Yeah.
You guys are cruel.
That's
what
cruel.
you are.
Okay.
Very cruel.
@SeanMansfield15.
Yeah.
How boom or bust is CD Lamb this year? Can he truly get to 1,400 yards and 8 touchdowns?
I believe he can. Look, I don't think there's any chance he busts, barring an injury.
Yeah.
He's going to get a massive target share. I mean, think about Amari Cooper and Cedric Wilson leaving for free agency. There is now a 28% target share from last year on the Cowboys that are now available. And so you think about, okay, what's his competition for targets? Dalton Schultz is still there. I mean, we're talking about Michael Gallup, who's coming back from a very serious injury. You've got Jalen Tolbert there, like Noah Brown. Like, it's that by releasing Amari Cooper, they basically, Jerry Jones and that team basically said, like, hey, CeeDee Lamb, you are the guy. So my expectation here is that he just gets a massive target share. This is a guy in his first 2 years in the league got over 100 targets, right? 104 last year. And so CeeDee Lamb, who's been a borderline top 20 wide receiver each of the first 2 years with all those other targets around there, he gets into the number one role. And I also think about this offense and CeeDee Lamb's versatility. He can play inside. He can play outside. They're going to be able to move him all over the line of scrimmage to create mismatches. I don't think there's any bust in him, barring an injury.
No,
to me, he can boom. Very high floor, and a number one wide receiver in fantasy is within the range of outcomes for CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, the one concern would be that this Dallas offense, they haven't really given an individual receiver huge target share before. It's not how it operates. At the same time, there's probably not been the gap that there is between CeeDee Lamb and the second best receiver on the team, who right now is Jalen Tolbert, potentially. Right. So there could be some change there. I mean, his totals for the season are set at 1175.5 yards, 7.5 touchdowns. That's what we're expecting as the average.
Give me the over.
Yeah, so
I'm taking the over on both of them.
And that's a very high floor as well. There's not many guys who are set at that level. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of boom with CD, and there's no real bust unless he gets hurt. Next question. @Trader Tennessee. Matthew, if you could be any fruit besides a berry, what would you be?
If I could be any fruit.
It's a great question from @Trader Tennessee.
Really? Because I think it's a terrible question. If I could be any fruit besides a berry, what fruit would I be?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good question. Like, I mean, do Choco Tacos count as a fruit?
They absolutely count.
They do not count as a fruit. I mean, I would probably be. I mean, I'm just trying to think of my own. Listen, I think I would. Well, you know what? I'd be an orange. I'd be an orange. I went to Syracuse.
Okay.
Look, everyone loves oranges, right? I mean, I went to Syracuse, so obviously go orange. But I mean, listen, you're handed out at halftime of kids' soccer games. You know, you come in a nice, protective seal. You peel off. You can be shared among people as well, like the little slices as well. You can be squeezed and made into a delicious juice. A lot of versatility to an orange. Give me an orange. I'm going to be an orange.
That was a lot tougher question than the CeeDee Lamb boom or bust question.
It really
wasn't
was.
Yeah. Okay, next one. @KingJar121.
Okay. Do you think he's really a king? Do you think he's actually royalty, or do you think he just made that up?
I'd say it's plus 15,000 is actually a king.
Right.
Okay, which receiver with an ADP between rounds 5 and 6 do you believe has the best chance to finish top 5 at the position?
I got 3.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you 3, and then you tell me which ones you like.
Yeah.
So I pulled it up right here. I've got the Yahoo ADP in terms of rounds 5 and 6. And here's who's going on Yahoo between rounds 5 and 6 that qualify at the position of wide receiver. Terry McLaurin, or Terry McScoren, as I like to call him, Mike Williams, Jalen Waddle, Cortland Sutton, Deontay Johnson, Allen Robinson, DK Metcalf. And I will say there are 3 that jump out to me that have a chance at being top 5. And, of course, they all do, right? But I'm going to say Terry McLaurin. I'm going to say, of course, well, he's going to get a massive target share he has every year of his career, and he's playing with the best quarterback of his career, not particularly close. I'm going to say Mike Williams. Like we've talked about on this show before, and I know we're going to talk about elsewhere, like we talked about earlier, right? Justin Herbert, and just in what we expect that offense to be. We expect Justin Herbert to have a massive ceiling. We talked about him on yesterday's show as well, right? So I think if you're just like, could Mike Williams put it all together this year? I'm betting on sort of that Keenan Allen takes a step back this year. Mike Williams takes a step up. So I think Mike Williams, especially if the touchdowns get there. And then I'll say Allen Robinson.
Your guy.
My guy who's, by the way, been I don't know that he's ever been a top 5, but he's absolutely been a top 10 fantasy wide receiver.
QB adjusted he has been.
Exactly.
No.
Again, we saw what adding Matthew Stafford to Cooper Kupp last year did for Cooper Kupp. And so if defenses focus this year on, hey, we're taking away Cooper Kupp, my expectation is that Allen Robinson with some touchdown luck could get there as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you mentioned 2 of the guys that I had. And when you're talking about someone who's going 5th or 6th round and the upside to become a top 5 at the position, you want variance. You want huge ceiling. And what creates variance is the unknown. And the unknown is a new quarterback situation.
Right.
Carson Wentz for Terry McLaurin and Matthew Stafford for Allen Robinson. So they definitely have that upside just because we haven't seen it before. A lot of the other guys we have. So I'd like those 2. Okay, at Montana Sauce.
Now, would you have put under that same scenario? Cortland Sutton also has a new quarterback. Would you have put him in that list?
I would. I just don't think he's quite as talented as Terry McLaurin and Allen Robinson. I think he's far off, but I believe that those 2 guys have more upside. They've just shown more.
And I also think Russell Wilson, with any indication of what he's done in his career, he likes to spread the ball around.
Yeah.
Russell's a big, team guy.
They're going to run the ball as well.
Yeah.
A lot.
But by the way, actually, other than Jalen Waddle, they all have new quarterbacks. DK Metcalf now has Geno Smith.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Deontay
Johnson now has Mitch Trubisky and maybe, maybe Kenny Pickett at some point. So they all do.
There's upside there. Okay.
Sure. But anyway, okay. What's next?
At Montana Sauce.
Okay.
Do you have any other cool or funny George Carlin stories that you could tell us?
I have a lot of funny and cool George Carlin stories. I don't know if I can tell it on the air. Let's see.
Let's be careful after the Alvin Kamara expletive.
Yeah, I mean, can I tell? I'm trying to think if I can tell this story on air. I probably can't. Here's a version of this. Here's a story I can tell you. So George Carlin is famous for the 7 dirty words on television routine.
Yep.
And it's actually, I remember talking to him about it, and when I worked for him, I was working for him on the George Carlin Show, which was a sitcom on Fox, and so I was the stage assistant. So in essence, I was George's assistant for the year. And we did an episode of that show where that was a play off the 7 dirty words. That George was a cab driver in the show, and he starts cursing in the cab, and somebody calls him, and he has to go to court for his taxi license, whatever. All it was a loose premise to get to the 7 dirty words you can't say on television. So 7 dirty words you couldn't say in a cab, and so it's a famous routine. I remember saying to George, I studied you in college. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, I went to Syracuse University. I took a class called Com Law. Shout out to Professor Flocky, wherever she is. And I took a course called Com Law, and I said, so we studied these, famous, court cases that involved communications in some way. And one of them was, I believe it was WBAI versus the FCC. And that was a radio station on Long Island that played the 7 dirty words routine. And so I studied that, and so I mentioned that to George. And George says, it's fascinating, right? He goes, that routine is in the law books as what is the definition of profanity.
Yeah, right.
What is the definition of profanity? And he goes, and what's amazing is that routine is like I had to come up with a new 10 minutes. He goes, and so, that night I'm drunk out of my mind, and I'm just trying to come up with, and I was just like, 9 words, 6 words, 7 dirty words. That sounds funny. He goes, and then I'm going through the dirty words, and don't worry, Alexa, I'm not going to say them. But he's just like, I'm going through this word, this word, this word. Oh, this is a funnier sounding word. Okay, what means this or this or this? And it's just like, Oh, and he's just like, I literally made it up in like 10 minutes, like drunk out of my mind. Like, and all I did was trying to come up with the funniest sounding dirty words.
Yeah.
And he goes, and that's the definition of profanity in America today. Something that I came up with drunk out of my mind at like 3 a.m. And so, anyway, that was George. And if you've ever watched any of George's routines, and I highly recommend going to YouTube and watching like a bunch of his routines because he was brilliant. Some of our younger viewers may not be aware of it. He was truly a brilliant man, and language was always a big thing for him. Like, and he would always say, like, language isn't important. It's the intent behind the language that means everything. He's like, because you can make anything sound inappropriate or not, it's all about the intent. Yep. He's like, ask me what I did this weekend.
What'd you do this weekend?
Well, me and my wife, we took the dog out for a walk.
It's good.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
Took the dog out for a walk.
What is this?
In the morning
an actor?
and the evening. That's what we did. Again, so that seems like there's another meaning to it, but I'm just telling you, that's all my wife and I did. We took the dog out for a walk. So so that was George's whole thing, was just about, it's all about intent and not about the language. And so George was brilliant about language. He's brilliant. And I loved working for the man. This is the other thing I will say, is that George was a brilliant comedian, but also like an incredibly kind boss, unbelievable man, and loved working for him, and the complete opposite of how he was on stage. Like, he was the sweetest, most gentle guy. Like, if you didn't, and then you'd see him on stage, and it's like, he's this crazy, ranting, angry guy. But off air, he was like the sweetest, most gentle. I loved the man. So anyway, rest in peace. There you go.
Our producer Alexa was on the edge of her seat that entire segment, but we got through it.
Alexa, I will tell you that story off air, because it's funnier with the curse words. I will just tell you that. It's definitely funnier with the curse words.
Okay. At Masshead99. Is drafting Gabe Davis at pick 37 before guys like Deontay Johnson, Mike Williams, Cortland Sutton, and Marquise Brown so outrageous?
It's not outrageous. I'm a big believer in, hey, get your guys, right? And I'm a big believer in get your guys. And get your guys when you want to. Having said that, I mean, by taking him there, you're basically taking out all profit. You're taking him that high, right? Before guys like Johnson, Sutton, Marquise Brown, guys that have produced at a high level before. I mean, I know it's been a while for Sutton, but we've seen him produce. We expect better things. Obviously, with Russell Wilson under center, Deontay Johnson has been nothing short of terrific, and we think he's got a quarterback upgrade this year. Hollywood Brown reconnected with his college quarterback. We expect him to have a big year in Arizona as well. So you're basically drafting him at his peak. Like there's not a lot of room for profit on Gabe Davis at that ADP.
You're buying upside that hasn't happened yet.
That's correct. Yeah. So I don't think it's outrageous, because I'm a big believer in the player, and I think he has a monster year. I'm all in on Gabe Davis. I love him. I have him on every dynasty team one, and I'm annoyed at the one guy that won't trade me Gabe Davis in that one dynasty league. I've tried a million times, but yeah, you're buying him at a high profit. So it's not outrageous. Just understand what you're getting yourself into. You don't have a lot of room for profit. You do have room for downside if the touchdowns don't end up going his way.
Yep. No, I agree with that. And the last one.
I'm just annoyed too. I just realized, because anyway. Well, I'll tell you off the air. Anyway. Sorry. Go ahead. What else?
Okay. The last one. I've got no chance of pronouncing this handle, so it's at Shiloh's GMA. How much emphasis do you place on preseason games, if any?
Some. I think it's all situationally dependent. So on one hand, you don't want to be sucked in by, players having monster games against, vanilla defenses, backups, that kind of thing. So I tend not to get sucked in by performance. What I do get sucked in is by usage. That's what's important, right? And so the idea of so Dameon Pierce is somebody who skyrocketed up ADP this year because he's had really strong performance, but what's important to me is usage. They held him out of the second preseason game. Normally, a fourth-round rookie doesn't get held out of the second preseason game. But that made you think, oh, he's their starter. And it's clear that, we think he's the best guy on that team. So seeing how many snaps a player plays with the first-team offense, seeing how many snaps, how many routes somebody runs with the first-team quarterback. Mo Alley Cox, who I'm obsessed with Mo Alley Cox.
Mac.
But honestly, Mo Alley Cox has been playing a ton of snaps with Matt Ryan in the first team offense, and he's been running a route on over half of the snaps that Matt Ryan's been under center. And you're like, okay, that's interesting. So I think over 70%, if I have that correct. Shout out to Dwayne McFarland, who charts that. And so I don't know, like that's what I'm looking for in the preseason game is usage in terms of, are they playing with the first team? How many snaps are they getting? What's the rotation? How many routes are they running with the first team quarterback under center? Are they being held out with the rest of the starters? That kind of thing. So that's what is, I think, interesting in the preseason. Having said that, it's still the preseason. It's the preseason for a reason. The Ravens have never lost a preseason game in history, as far as I can tell. They have lost regular NFL games. It's the preseason.
Do you think Logan Thomas is jealous of all this Mo Alley Cox chat?
He's not. Logan knows. Logan knows where it's number one.
Okay.
He knows where it's number one. But I do have a weird obsession with Mo Alley Cox. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, okay? Respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.